So today's the day, guys. Is Trials of Osiris saved? Well, fellas, I always believe that there is room for improvement on everything. However, what I currently experienced this afternoon has been the best trial experience I have ever had. And it wasn't because I was just shadow diving opponents one after another, which, by the way, if you still hate cheesy stuff, Trials brings it out. So just beware, everyone's rocking pretty much the most broken things in Trials. But you see, that's what you want the complaints to be. You want the complaints to center around the meta and not necessarily the game mode itself. From what I experienced though this afternoon, Trials is probably one of the most rewarding playlists in the game. For both veteran players, PvE players, PvP players, noobs, you could literally have never stepped inside of Trials, and I could tell you right now, even though you may not have the best of times, at least you're gonna walk away with some loot. Now, before we get into my complete thoughts on Trials and essentially what I think of the game mode, first I'm gonna talk about what has changed in its reward structure before we get into its matchmaking, as there's like a hybrid system with skill-based matchmaking and win matchmaking. And of course, we'll be talking about cheaters. This was one of the only play sessions I've ever had where I did not run into a single cheater. It's crazy. So first up, let's talk about the loot structure and what's changed here. Trials is essentially and fundamentally still the same. The goal? To win games, to go flawless, to get 7 wins and no losses, to eventually get to the lighthouse and get the adept loot. Now, before you begin this, of course, you have to pick up a passage, and that's pretty much all still the same, where you have a variety of different passages to choose from to help you go flawless, or at least help you get through the card. What's different from now versus the previous version of Trials of Osiris is there's no longer a 3, 5, and 7 win reward. Instead, there's essentially only 2 rewards that you can get throughout an entire Trials run. One of them is a 50 round win reward, which I believe is a pinnacle reward, and it can be anything. It can be a piece of armor or even a weapon, but that's after you win 50 rounds inside of Trials, which I know sounds like a lot, but some people were telling me that if you actually win the games themselves, it like doubles that amount or something. I don't know if that's actually true or not. I just know that that reward actually dropped on us, and I know it dropped on us way before we got 50 rounds won, but we were also simultaneously winning games. The other reward is after you reach 7 wins on your card. Now, a lot of you are saying, yo, 7 wins on a card. Come on, that's a lot to ask for. Not necessarily. You see, the difference now in comparison to the previous version of Trials is that if you lose, this does not result in you having to reset your card. Matter of fact, you don't ever have to reset your card. You can continually keep playing, win or lose, until you get to 7 wins. And it's majorly beneficial to continue deeper into your card, as the reputation gains that you get for ranks with Saint 14 is substantially higher. You go from getting 20 reputation to 100 reputation, meaning trial Ingrams will be raining on you. And yes, there is no limit. You can continually keep grinding this all weekend long. Now, there's a lot of benefits for obtaining these trial Ingrams. You can either have the crypt art decrypt them for you for Trials loot, or you can actually focus target it with a number of other resources, including Glimmer and Legendary Shards on a specific weapon or armor piece. My only complaint here is that the Glimmer cost is pretty high, but the focusing itself is very, very nice. I was able to actually lock down a Reed's Regret today that was very nicely rolled, which is why even if you don't go flawless, it's okay, because just getting deeper into the card, just getting those reputation gains is rewarding in itself. But wait, don't you have to get the win to get the 100 reputation gain? No, you don't even gotta win. Now, Bungie's actually introduced a system here to combat win trading. They know if you're playing the game or not. And there was actually a few times that we loaded in where the team in front of us either backed out or they got error coded, and the game wouldn't even give us the full 100 reputation. It would still give us 20 as if we were still on the front end of our card. But other benefits that's included here: after every single game, if you have 7 wins, even if you have a flawed passage, you have a chance of a Trials Ingram dropping for you, Ascendant Shards, Prime Ingrams, Enhancement Prisms, Enhancement Cores. It is by far the most rewarding amounts of loot that you can get, and you don't even have to be flawless to get it. Now, all of this sounds great for the player that doesn't go flawless. What about the player that does want to commit and go to the lighthouse? What do they get? Well, going to the lighthouse upon reaching 7 wins without a loss will net you, of course, the adept weapon for that week. This week is Shiora's Wrath. Hopefully next week it'll be Reed's Regret. And of course, this rotates every single week. However, after you pick up your loot, you can continue to queue into Trials of Osiris with your flawless passage in 7 wins. You will be matched only with players, or you should only be matched with players that have 7 wins. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they have a flawless passage. It could still be a flawed passage. However, if you win any match with 7 7 wins on a flawless passage, not only do you get the opportunity of getting a Trials Ingram, Ascendant Shards, Prisms, Cores, and all those things, you simultaneously have the chance of an adept weapon dropping on you. Now, it's actually the adept weapon that's dropping that week. So for us this week, Shiora's Wrath in its adept form would be dropping after every game upon reaching flawless and continuing on our Trials run. This is by far the best farm I've ever seen for adept loot. It almost makes me mad that I even played Trials before now. Considering how many hours are spent just trying to go flawless to just get one adept weapon, now you're getting it almost every other game. And that's pretty much what we were getting loot-wise. Every other game, as long as we didn't have a flawed passage and we were sitting at 7 wins, still flawless, if we continue to win, every other game would give us another adept weapon. Now, before my players that can't go flawless get upset, this is the beautiful thing about this system. You see, guys, if players that are going flawless never reset their card and continue playing Trials on their 7-win cards, that means that the people that are still trying to get flawless will not be in their matchmaking pool. That's the beauty here, guys. For the longest time, everyone in the Destiny community has been asking for flawless players to be removed from the matchmaking pool and to just play amongst themselves. The problem with that is that there was never a rewarding structure to give to those flawless players to say, hey, it's worth the headache to go up against these sweaty players every single game, even after you've gone flawless. But now with this system, with adept loot reigning every other game, it is 100% recommended that for my players that are flawless to not reset. Continue playing deeper into the card. Continue playing with that flawless passage, as it is by far the most optimal way to get adept loot. And the beautiful thing about all of this is as we get further and further into the weekend, for my players that did not go flawless, it should get easier, as more and more flawless players are matchmaking only amongst themselves and other players sitting at 7 wins. Now, I'd say one of the biggest contributors to Trials feeling very healthy today is Trials now has matchmaking, which is huge. However, it does not have a freelance playlist yet. And that's something that Bungie wants to introduce later into the season. And I'm assuming they didn't want to introduce it on day 1, as that will be a divide there in the player base. You'll have only solo players playing with solo players, which is fair, and then your regular matchmaking playlists. Very similar to comp. And that's essentially the system that Trials will eventually adopt. However, for the solo player, it is more difficult, as you can imagine. Even if there are 3 really good solo players, if they don't have an open chat or a way to communicate, that can definitely put you at a disadvantage against a pre-made team. But you don't have to communicate. And that's the beautiful thing about Trials matchmaking right now. You don't have to do anything. You literally just have to load in, play as hard as you can, and if you get a win, great. And if not, and you just get a couple round wins, that's fine too, because you're making progress throughout everything that you're doing within Trials, whether it's getting reputation with Saint 14, getting those trial Ingrams, or getting round wins toward that weekly reward. And as the weekend goes further and further, Trials and going flawless should get easier, with the separation of flawless players continually farming for adept loot and the players that have not gone flawless. This system, guys, is beautiful. I could have never thought of a better system than this, because essentially there isn't a split here in the matchmaking pool. It's all still being done within a single matchmaking pool. However, the game is able to recognize who's been flawless and who hasn't, and divides them accordingly. Now, say you've gone flawless for the weekend, you're about to finish up, you're about to be completely done, you can't do another card. They're all the targeted loot that Saint 14 has. He also allows you to turn in your flawless passage with 50,000 Glimmer, 250 legendary shards, and a Trials Ingram to get another roll of the adept weapon for that week. Now, don't do this if you're not going to continue to grind past flawless for that adept loot. Only turn this in. Only redeem that flawless passage when you are ready to reset your card. Now, what happens when you've gone flawless, but you end up losing a game after going flawless? Can you still get adept rewards? From my experience, no, guys. I have a flawed passage and I played 5 games. 5 games and we won all 5 of them. My experience was that you can continue to get Ascendant Shards, Enhancement Prisms, Enhancement Cores, all those good things, and I believe even Trial Ingrams, but no longer adept loot. Once the game realizes that you have lost and that you now have a flawed passage, you will no longer be able to get adept loot as you continue deeper in the card. However, this does not mess up the ability to redeem your passage with Saint 14, as the game still registers that you have have gone flawless despite your card being a flawed card. Although it is suggested to still go to the lighthouse, loot everything at the lighthouse, because once you have a flawed passage there, the lighthouse won't let you back in. So it's kind of interesting that same 14 recognizes that you went flawless, but the lighthouse doesn't. So make sure after you go flawless to go directly to the lighthouse, get your loot, and continue to grind as long as you can with your flawless passage until it becomes flawed and you get a loss. Then go back to same 14, redeem that flawed passage to get one more adept drop and reset your card. Overall, guys, I know loot isn't everything because we want a fun game mode, we want to have a good time, we want a nice meta, but for the longest time, Trials has been the stingiest playlist. And as of right now, it is one of the most rewarding playlists in the game. Is Trials of Osiris saved? It's a hell of a lot better, guys. So much better than what it was. Anti-cheat seems to be working. I didn't run into a single cheater today. Matchmaking overall is having a good, healthy effect on pulling a lot more players into Trials of Osiris. And a lot of people that are jumping into Trials never wanted to try Trials of Osiris before, simply because they didn't want to get a pre-made team together. But having matchmaking allows everyone to dabble in this playlist. And the fact that getting a loss on your card no longer hurts you or resets your passage, and you can continue deeper and deeper into that Trials passage, and you get rewarded for getting to that 7-win mark and getting more and more reputation. All in all, guys, all the changes that we're handing out to Trials are fantastic. I think the only thing left for Trials to do at this point is, of course, add a freelance playlist, which we'll be getting later in the season. A lot of things are at play here today, guys, to give us the experience that we're experiencing now. The loot structure overall is much better. Account recoveries have been banned. Anyone that gets cheated gets automatically banned by either BattleEye or Bungie's in-house anti-cheat. And the separation there between players that have gone flawless and players that have not is fantastic. Now, someone's going to ask, what about skill-based matchmaking, as that's supposed to be inside of Trials? My experience is that skill-based matchmaking seems to be heavily weighted on the front end, the first couple games. Now, I could be wrong. I only reset a couple times a day. However, my experience though, when starting from the front end of the cards, is that skill-based matchmaking seems to be in effect for the first 2 games. And then after that, it seems like matchmaking shifts to card-based matchmaking. And I noticed this after we completed our first flawless run. Again, the skill-based matchmaking is not an overarching skill-based number that Bungie gives you for, say, regular Crucible. It is only dependent upon your performance for that weekend. So after we'd already done our first run and gotten flawless, when we started again, I found that the first 2 games were harder than all my flawless games today. And then after we got past the first 2 games, then things became card-based or win-based matchmaking, meaning we were matching against people with similar wins. Long story short, this means that players that just want to dabble in Trials but may not have the highest of skill level should be matching people of like skill on the front end of the card. However, it is highly suggested, guys, that you get deeper into the card. The rewards overall get much, much better when you get past 5 wins, when you start getting 100 reputation per win. And even if you do have a flawed passage, all the loot that comes with every single game, win or lose, is more than enough reason to give Trials of Osiris another go. So guys, that is Trials of Osiris and how it works. Its reward structure overall, I am loving it. On top of that, very much like Shaxx and Zavala and the Drifter, getting those rank ups is rewarding all in itself with Prime Ingrams, Ascended Shards, upgrade modules, and everything else. Hands down, Trials has become one of the most rewarding playlists in the game. We'll be playing all day tomorrow, guys. I think Les and I are probably going to be doing some trial carries. If you want to come by our Twitch, you're more than welcome. If you want to get a team yourself, feel free to come by our Discord. We've got lots of people playing already in there, teaming up in our LFGs. And understand, getting a loss now does not possess the same level of stress that it once did. It's okay. It's okay to get a loss on your passage. Just know, as the weekend gets deeper and deeper, going flawless should be something that should get easier. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.